Hello, everybody. I'm sending my very best regards to all of my 8th District constituents and all of our friends throughout Maryland and beyond. It's been quite a week. It's been a really intense and in many ways impressive week in Washington. We passed on Thursday the most comprehensive sweeping police reform legislation in the history of the United States of America. Nothing even comes close to what we did in the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which abolished strangleholds and chokeholds, carotid holds. It banned racial, ethnic, and religious profiling. It criminalized lynching for the first time as a matter of federal law. It established a federal nationwide database of police misconduct, so that when there is a bad cop who violates the rights of the people or commits violence against civilians, we can get their name up on that list, and they won't, get fired in Atlanta, Georgia, and then resurface a week later in Houston, Texas. We get rid of the corrupt and fanciful doctrine made up by right-wing judges about qualified immunity, which says that if police officers violate someone's constitutional rights, kill them or beat them up or steal their money, and there's cases of all of those happening, but it's never happened before, then the officers can escape liability and the police departments can escape liability and having to pay for it because it is said that the officers had no way of knowing that this was actually against the Constitution, even if the court finds that it violates due process or equal protection or the Fourth Amendment or what have you. We're requiring the installation of body cameras, of dashboard cameras. We have 15 different parts of this. This is a meaningful, effective, and powerful response drafted primarily by the Congressional Black Caucus, as well as with the House Judiciary Committee that I serve on. And we got it through in record time in just several weeks. So we're very hopeful that the Senate will take it up. Mitch McConnell said he doesn't like the whole bill. A lot of our Republican colleagues say they like some of it, but on other parts, well, we're willing to listen to them. Tim Scott's got a bill. They'll pass something, and then we'll go to conference and we'll see what we can get done. But we've got to keep the pressure on in order to get the strongest possible bill that we can. I want to thank everybody who's been protesting all over America, everybody who's gone to Washington, all of my great constituents in the 8th District who've protested everywhere from Sykesville to Rockville to Silver Spring and Tacoma Park, Cabot John, Glen Echo, all over Frederick County and Middletown. People are just going out and protesting, and it's quite a sight to behold. In the large cities, in the small towns, America has stood up to say, we need a new social contract. We can't have a social contract where the rights of African Americans are at the mercy of renegade cops who can beat people up or kill people with impunity. So we're dealing with that. That's number one. Number two, I just got back an hour ago from the Capitol, where we voted to pass H.R. 51, the legislation to create the 51st state, Washington, D.C. D.C. here stands for Douglas Commonwealth, named after Frederick Douglass. I reminded them that Frederick Douglass was born in Maryland as a slave, escaped from slavery into freedom, and became our great abolitionist hero. He did end up in Washington, D.C., and thus you can go to his house in Anacostia. And he ended up as the Marshal of the District of Columbia. And I think it would be a point of great pride for Maryland to have Washington, Douglas Commonwealth be a state on land that used once to be part of Maryland. But it's going to be a big struggle. We passed this overwhelmingly within the Democratic caucus. Every Democrat in the House voted for it, except for one, Colin Peterson from Minnesota. But otherwise, it was unanimous. Other than that, no Republicans voted for it, and they leveled a series of completely specious and phony objections, which I tried to answer on the floor as one of the people managing the legislation, and I'm going to put up my answer to the Republicans in the motion to recommit online. And if you want to get into the details, and if you want to see how I defended the absolute constitutionality of what we're doing, check it out, because Congress has the complete power under Article 4, Section 3 to admit new states. Congress has exercised that power 37 times. We've admitted 37 new states, which is nearly 3 times the number of original states we had. We had 13, of course, when it all started. No state has been admitted by constitutional amendment, and there are no constitutional impediments to redrawing the boundaries of the District of Columbia to shrink it to the federal mall and the Capitol and the White House and the Supreme Court and so on, and then yielding the residential lands to the state that has been organized by the 700,000 residents of New Columbia. And so this would be a great thing for them, obviously. It'd be a great thing for American democracy. It'd be a great thing for us as a neighbor to have more regional power fighting for the interests that we all have in common, like Metro and the Chesapeake Bay and climate change and progressive inclusion for everybody. So I'm excited about having participated in that and the fact that we passed it on a vote of 232 to 180. So it's an historic day. It's never happened before for our friends in Washington. But that's not all. We had a number of very big hearings this week, too. Today, we had a hearing in the Coronavirus Committee about money that has still not reached the people. And I was very focused on the stimulus checks, because there are around 11 million people who still haven't gotten their stimulus checks. And if you're one of them, call my office. We will do whatever we can do to try to get it for you. But I raised it with the Comptroller General, who leads the General Accounting Office, because he did a report on this. He found that homeless people and poor people and people who had not paid taxes for the last 2 years, or not filed taxes because they're no longer in the workforce, were the people most likely not to be getting their checks. And what's interesting about that list is those are the people who probably need the checks the most to get them through the fiscal nightmare, the financial nightmare caused by the pandemic. So the Comptroller General promised me that he would issue a series of recommendations to the Secretary of the Treasury, to the IRS, about how to get that money to those people who still have not gotten their $1,200 stimulus check. And again, call my office if you're having a specific individual problem and you think that we can help you with it. We've also heard from a lot of constituents who very honestly and civically minded and forthrightly called us up to say they got a check for a deceased husband or a deceased wife, and what are they supposed to do with it, and why are they getting that? I asked the GAO about that issue, and he reported back that the Treasury Department under this administration, the IRS, unbelievably made the call that they thought, since checks were supposed to go to everybody who had paid taxes, they should go to people who paid taxes even if they were deceased. They then changed their view on that. They revised their view. But meantime, we have millions of people receiving these checks and not knowing what to do with it. And it caused a lot of emotional anguish for some people. And I'm very sorry about that. And I think the Department of Treasury apologized about it. But in any event, now they're saying, don't keep those checks. You can return them to Treasury or to the IRS. But there are a number of issues like that that we're just hoping they can clean up and they can get it together. Very questionable judgments being made by the administration on a number of things. We also had a hearing about the federal workforce in the Government Operations Committee. I think that was on Wednesday, where we met for several hours to talk about what is the federal government doing to protect federal workers, so that as we resume operations in different places, what are we doing to make sure that we've got either plexiglass dividers put up and or continuing masking rules, distancing rules, and so on. And it has been catch as catch can, as it has been generally with this administration, because OSHA, which is the federal agency which is assigned to protect the American worker in the workplace, has failed to adopt an emergency rule. Even 4.5 months after the emergency began, we still don't have an emergency rule for the ordinary office place, for the meat packing plant, for people in sports, you name it. We don't have it. It's just not there. We, of course, had the president who declared the meat processing plants part of the critical infrastructure to try to compel the meatpacking workers to go back to work, even before the employers had instituted any distancing or masking rules at all. So it's just been very chaotic, and we're involved still in this helter-skelter patchwork reopening at a time when the COVID-19 crisis is again spiraling out of control. The pandemic in Alabama, in Arkansas, in Oklahoma, in South Carolina, in Georgia, in Texas is way out of control. In many states, it's up 200, 250% in the course of the last 2 weeks. And so, as expected, I am sorry to say that the lethal failure of this administration to adopt a nationwide testing, contact tracing, and public health plan has led us precisely into the recurring outbreaks and the recurring shutdowns that we warned about when Donna Shalala and I introduced the Reopen America Act. It has just been chaos, and now we have over 125,000 of our people who we have lost in this crisis, and more than 2.3 million sickened. And while the rate in the European Union is going down, 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 in America it's going up, up, up. And we lead the world right now in the case count and in the death count. So I'm begging all of my constituents and all my friends out there, please keep wearing those masks, keep the distance going, despite all of the mixed signals being sent by President Trump, despite all of the propaganda and confusion and adoption of miracle cures and the idea of injecting Clorox and cleaners into people's bodies. Forget all of that stuff. Despite it all, we are still in the middle of this pandemic. As Dr. Fauci said, it's not a question of whether there will be a second wave. We're still in the middle of the first wave right now. So we're doing everything in our power to try to get the Congress, to get the government to take this situation seriously. So I clashed with my colleagues on the Republican side today about, again, their refusal to wear masks in Congress, while they chide the Democrats for setting up some of our meetings remote and for having proxy voting procedures which allow us to keep the continuity of government going. They won't wear masks when we come here, thereby terrifying lots of members on both sides of the aisle who don't want to be exposed unnecessarily to the virus. We don't have a cure. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have a treatment. All we've got at this point is the public health measures, which have been recommended by the Centers for Disease Control, which have been recommended by the president's own medical advisors, and yet they continue to flout them and defy them as if there was something macho about not wearing a mask. And I did say to my Republican colleagues today on the coronavirus committee, hey, if you think this is macho, if you think this is tough, go and spend one day with our frontline providers. Go spend a day with the nurses and the physician assistants and the firefighters and the cops, the people on the front lines, okay? One day. And if you can't do that, at least listen to them, because all of them are saying the same thing, which is wear your masks, put your masks on, and be very careful. This is a killer disease that has just sliced through the heart of America. There's a lot of devastation out there. And so we want to make sure we're taking it seriously. I am hopeful that we can rebuild a sense of unity, a sense of social cohesion and political cohesion so we can get through this. But right now, we cannot even get our GOP colleagues to choose to wear masks. So that gives you a little bit of a taste of what my week has been like. There are some wonderful signs of hope and promise legislatively in terms of our police reform, in terms of people getting behind the idea of political equality, voting rights, democracy for everybody, even as we continue to struggle with this terrible disease. So I send everybody out there my very best. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay close, and please let us know if there's anything we can do for you. And have a great weekend.